Good afternoon, everyone. A very warm welcome to all distinguished speakers, panelists, colleagues, partners, and participants for joining us today from across the ASEAN region and beyond. I am Dr. Shrujita Banerjee from the Asian Institute of Technology, and it's my pleasure to serve as the Master of Ceremonies for today's webinar on nature-based solution for climate adaptation and resilience in ASEAN cities, organized under the CLARE-ASEAN initiative. Thank you all for taking the time to join us today. We are delighted to have such a diverse and engaged audience with us. To begin the session, it's my pleasure to invite Mr. Rizki Janwar from the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, FCDO, to deliver the welcome remarks.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Mr. Rizki, the floor is yours. Yes.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, good morning, all. It's really great to see so many people joining today. I'm Rizki. I'm the Southeast Asia Science and Tech Advisor with the UK FCDO. On behalf of the CLARE team from UK FCDO and Canada's International Development Research Centre, or IRC, we would like to welcome all of you in the first CLARE-ASEAN webinar, where today we will dive into the topic of nature-based solutions for climate adaptation and resilience. This is the first of a number of webinars that will be hosted by CLARE-ASEAN, so please do watch the space. CLARE-ASEAN is part of the CLARE program that aims to support global climate adaptation and resilience through research and evidence. In CLARE-ASEAN, we're working closely with researchers, governments, and local communities to promote locally led approach to climate resilience, particularly in Southeast Asian cities. Urban areas in Southeast Asia face increasing climate risk and vulnerabilities, and nature-based solutions offers a practical way to address these challenges while also delivering wider social and environmental benefits. So this webinar today aims to bring together the NBS experts in the region to share evidence, to identify what works and doesn't work, and also to explore how NBS interventions can be scaled and integrated into urban planning. For us in CLARE, this is not just about funding research projects, it's also about building longer-term partnerships, exchanging knowledge, and also working together to turn good ideas into solutions that can be implemented on the ground. It's also an important part of how the UK is strengthening its broader collaboration with ASEAN on climate change and on urban development. So I'm looking forward to a great discussion today. And finally, big thanks also from me to the CLARE-ASEAN research team, particularly led by AIT, for their amazing work that leads us to this webinar today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rizki, for your insightful welcome remarks and continued support for the regional climate resilience initiatives. So, our next speaker will provide an overview of the CLARE-ASEAN initiative and its broader vision for socially inclusive climate adaptation and resilience in the region. It's my pleasure to invite Professor Shobhakar Dhakkal from the Asian Institute of Technology. Professor Dhakkal, over to you.
Thank you, Srijita. Thank you so much. Thank you, colleagues, for joining this webinar. As Rizki mentioned, this is one of the first series of seminars that we are going to organize from now to next few months. And I'd like to give you a little bit introduction of CLARE-ASEAN project and also request your kindly joining the other events also that are planned for in next several weeks, next several months. As Rizki also mentioned, that CLARE-ASEAN goal is to support socially inclusive climate adaptation and resilience with focusing on ASEAN cities. Next slide, please, Srijita. So here the idea is that the idea is to generate new knowledge through the action research and participatory process where research is co-designed in very action-oriented fashion in multiple facets of the urban adaptation and resilience in bit of a hazard agnostic perspective. So in this particular program, which is CLARE program, led by AIT in collaboration with the ASEAN Secretariat and ASEAN Working Group on Climate Change. This program is essentially a 2-year action research program. Our focus has been on the ODA eligible ASEAN member states. We are primarily working on a couple of dimensions. I'll explain you in next slide. Among them are urban heat, nature-based solution, urban climate finance, and the planning and governance aspects. Next slide, please. So we are working on 4 different dimensions. The first is we are implementing a place-based action research projects in ASEAN cities. We are carrying out the research activity in 14 cities in 7 ASEAN member states. And this research has been carried out through 4 cross-national, locally led projects of 15 months. These are 4 projects which I don't have much time to discuss, but you can explore more through the website of the CLARE-ASEAN, Be Housing Project, NB CLARE Project, Hammer Project, and the CAPE Project. These are again, once again, cross-national projects, but led by different institutions throughout the region. Also, we are doing the regional synthesis of research evidences based on what exists, the knowledge in these particular 4 domains I explained to earlier, from the scientific policy and action support, what kind of evidence exists, we'll pull them together. So this regional synthesis, again, happening around 4 different lines: nature-based solution, urban heat, financing for urban climate adaptation, and the efficacies of the planning and the governance. So the evidence tailoring process that we are using in CLARE-ASEAN is that we have a place-based research, action-oriented research being carried out in the region, but also we draw evidence from regional synthesis and we blend that together. And also we communicate and take feedback from the stakeholder in order to tailor the evidences so that policymakers and the broader community can know about that and can learn from this. Again, the networking has been a core part of it. We have been pretty active in the ASEAN process. For example, ASEAN Climate Change Strategic Action Plan 2026-2030. Also, we have been active in APAN Forum, Asia Pacific Adaptation Forum, ASEAN Sustainability Dialogue, and different forums in order to create that viable network where all colleagues can together. We are also aligning our work with the IPCC special report on climate change and cities. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah. Then let me give you quickly what is coming up in next few months so that we look forward to your active engagement also. We are looking forward to organize a series of events in next few months. We just concluded the first regional workshop and dialogue just last week. We brought together 60-70 stakeholders from different parts of the ASEAN in order to discuss this important issue and to make those evidence clear and to get some input in our evidence tailoring process. So we have a number of other events are in pipeline. And once again, we are going to inform you about these events in the due course. Next slide, please. Then, as Rizky mentioned, that this is the seminar, this is a webinar, the first in the series. So we are having this webinar today. We are going to organize other webinars on nature-based solution, urban heat, financing for adaptation and resilience, and the efficacies of the planning and governance. So these webinars will be conducted in series fashion in next couple of months. So once again, we'd like to invite you to be with us in the upcoming events. Next slide, please. Then we are doing, I'll not get into more detail, but these are the 4 different type of regional synthesis we are carrying out. And this is a part of our evidence tailoring process. And there we are very much engaged with the broader community and also our action research. Next slide, please. So our key policy brief, which will come out at the end, targeting broader community and also specifically ASEAN member states, will have a policy brief in heat, nature-based solution, on the gender equality and inclusion, urban planning and governance and financing. So idea is to come up with evidences which works on the region, what works, what doesn't work, what are the strategy and what kind of approaches the ASEAN member states and the broader community can pursue in promoting urban adaptation and the resilience action in the region. Next slide, please. Thank you. With that, let me stop here. And once again, we look forward your presence in our next events, which are going to be organized in the due course. Thank you so much, and welcome again.
Thank you very much, Professor Thakur, for that comprehensive overview of the CLARE-ASEAN initiative and its important regional contributions. So now we move to the introduction of today's webinar. I would like to invite Professor Mukund Babel from the Asian Institute of Technology to introduce the objectives and thematic focus of today's session. Professor Babel, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Srijita, for giving me an opportunity to kind of introduce the webinar. Can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah. So basically, there are three broad objectives of this webinar, which is conducted now, is about 2 hours. The first one is to synthesize and discuss what are the emerging evidences on the effectiveness of NBS in the region, especially with respect to climate adaptation and also socially inclusive resilience development. The second one is to dig into what are the key enabling environmental conditions in terms of governance, in terms of implementation factors, in terms of what really has influenced the success or limitations of NBS initiatives which have been taken over last decade or so in the region. And the third one is also looking at what are the way forward in terms of what are the practical pathways to scale and implement NBS in the region. Next slide, please. So with three objectives, we have come up with 4 outputs of this webinar in terms of kind of developing a summary of the key insights, including those evidences, good practices, lesson learned, and this all will come through all the presentations which are lined up in today's webinar. We will also kind of document what are the key challenges and how do we address those challenges with respect to enabling conditions. The third one is what are the practical entry points and policy relevant recommendations which can be made forward to ASEAN member states. The fourth one is, of course, how do we really strengthen our knowledge sharing and knowledge exchange and networking. So these are the 4 outputs we expect from this. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, that we have received about 575 registrations. I see 228 participants joining this, which is about 40%, which is quite good from my experiences. And we have a majority of registrants coming from research organizations, universities, academic institutes, and about 10% from government agencies. And more important is international development agencies also representing about 15%. This is based on the registrations we have received. Next slide, please. This is the agenda of the webinar. There are 5 segments. Segment 1 we are currently in, which is opening and introductions. Second segment will be on keynote speech. Third segment is on panel discussion, which will be for about 45 minutes. and then we will have interaction with all of you participants. So I would like to encourage you to put your questions in Q&A box there. And also towards the end, we will have closing remarks and key takeaways from today's webinar, including getting your feedback and closing remarks from Dr. Aryan. Next, please. So I would like to again inform all the participants that there will be three polls we are going to conduct along this webinar, and you will have an opportunity to put forward your comments, questions in Q&A as we go along. Next slide, please. Before I stop, I would like to acknowledge FCDO and IDRC for funding support for this CLARE-ASEAN project, as well as all the activities which are being implemented, ASEAN Secretariat and ASEAN Working Group on Climate Change. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Babel, for setting the context so clearly for today's discussion. Before we move into the keynote session, we would like to hear from our audience through a short interactive poll. Our first poll is intended to understand the background and interest of the participants joining us today. Now I would request my colleague to launch the first poll. Please complete the poll in 30 to 40 seconds. I would request my colleague to stop the poll and show the results to us. So we see around 83% of the total participants who has joined us today have participated in this poll, and around 43% of them says that they are somewhat familiar with the nature-based solution terminology for urban adaptation, climate adaptation. So this is quite a good number, as we see that more or less all our registrants have some idea about NDS, and we would like to know more in the further session. So my colleague can stop. And we now move with the keynote session. It's a great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Perrin Hamel from NTU Singapore. Dr. Hamel, we are honored to have you with us today. The floor is yours, and you're now the co-host, and you can share your screen.
Great, thank you so much. Just checking that you are seeing my screen correctly.
Yes, we can.
Yes, excellent. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's a great pleasure to participate in this first webinar and contribute to the CLARE in ASEAN program. I'll get started because we don't have a ton of time, and I'm excited for the second part as well, the panel discussion. What I'd like to share with you today is these 4 messages that I'll elaborate on. We're building the cities of tomorrow today. That's an important starting point. Nature-based solutions can address multiple compounded challenges. We'll talk about this multifunctionality. But there is a but, nature-based solutions are not a panacea. And this is something that we'll discuss I'll present during the keynotes and with the panelists. And we have resources to keep working in the right direction, however we defined it. So starting with the first message, we're building the cities of tomorrow today. I like to recall this quote from former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon: "Our struggle for global sustainability will be won or lost in cities." This is something that I think all of us joining this webinar are acutely aware of. And there are many challenges that cities face, and globally for our planet, sustainability, urban sustainability is increasingly important. So we know that there's a rapid urban transformation in Asia in particular, over 2.3 billion urban residents, and it's expected to grow another 50% by 2050. So clearly acute challenges. And we also know that this is coupled with climate change and environmental degradation. For those of you who are not so familiar with it already, I use here as the second slide of background the donut from Donut Economics. The way this diagram is read is to look at the ecological ceiling. So these are all the environmental issues in the outer circle that our planet faces. Climate change, ocean acidification, we have water-related challenges, we have air pollution, biodiversity. And so we know that our planet can only do so much in supporting the human pressures. We also know that we want for every single human on the planet to have what we call here a social foundation. So we want to provide the basic water, food, health, safeguards for people to have access to these basic needs. And so the framework has been used a lot, and unfortunately, you can see that a lot of these planetary boundaries, we call these environmental outer layers, the planetary boundaries, have been breached. Conversely, we are falling short on the provision of basic needs here from the social foundation. So this is really, when we think about if you're a mayor today, these are the challenges that you have to address. You know, you want to provide these important and meet these basic needs, but you also know that there are acute challenges that our planet faces. So quite humbling in that sense. And so this is where nature-based solutions come in. They can address multiple compounded challenges. There are a few of you from the poll who are not so familiar with nature-based solutions. So if for the majority who is, bear with me for this one slide where we provide the definition. Actions to protect, sustainably manage, and restore natural or modified ecosystems. So these actions need to address societal challenges, such as those that I just described before. They need to do so by providing human well-being and biodiversity benefits. So this is the important part, as well as people and planet. So you have examples of these, the implementation of these nature-based solutions on these slides, many of them from Singapore, where I'm based. And I'm using in the next 3 slides this typology from the World Bank because I like how they position urban nature-based solutions within the landscape. On this first slide, this is the river basin scale. And to illustrate it, you can see the city here. Thinking about upland forests that may be outside the city, they're actually part of urban nature-based solutions because the water we drink, the flood that we face in cities would be affected by good management upstream. Zooming in on the city here, we have another range of nature-based solutions, the urban forest, smallest scale, river and stream renaturation, open green spaces, etc. And if we zoom in even more, this is the neighborhood or building scale. And so this, we have the green walls, the green roofs, retention ponds, pocket parks. So this would be the purely urban that perhaps some urban designers have in mind when they think about urban nature-based solutions. And so an important point for nature-based solutions is, of course, that they provide these ecosystem services. These are the benefits that I mentioned in the definition. They provide air cleaning, carbon sequestration for climate mitigation, shade, cooling, evapotranspiration for the urban heat, which is one of the core focus for at least one of the projects in CLARE in ASEAN, etc. So this is a very critical part of nature-based solutions, that they are able to provide these ecosystem services. So let's move on to how they work. There is actually lots of evidence that nature-based solutions work, that they do provide these benefits. An important reference that I would recommend for everyone here to follow is that provided by IPBES, the so-called IPCC for biodiversity and ecosystem services. So their reports, this is the first global assessment. There are many more reports, not necessarily focusing on urban, but urban is part of them. And they are, I mentioned, an important authoritative work because each report is debated, negotiated, approved in a plenary session with all the member states. So in that sense, they provide an important reference. Many more reports. I think many of you would be familiar with a lot of these reports. There's a ton of information over the past 2 decades, and especially last decade. This is the World Bank report that I mentioned. I'll draw your attention to 2 reports that are more recent. This one is the Roadmap for Urban Nature-Based Solutions, led by the Natura project out of the US, so National Science Foundation, but it is a global project. And so they have enabled teams, regional teams, one of whom I was part of. A few of you on the webinar were also part of this team, to collate information on nature-based solutions from a regional perspective. So some of the outputs in the report are this collection of case studies. You can see here Bishan Ang Mo Kio Park in Singapore, the Supac system, which I chose purposely because it's perhaps not necessarily thought of as urban, but again in a very dense landscape, as in Bali in Indonesia. It's also important to think about transformation of these and the protection of these nature-based solutions. And so there's a lot of insights, but also just like these case studies that are great to learn from. The second more recent report that I wanted to highlight here is something that many of you must have seen. There was a lot of press also in social media, project funded by the European Union that led to the nature-based solution platform for ASEAN. So I wanted to spend just a couple of minutes highlighting some of the key points. One of them being that they use the IUCN framework for nature-based solution that is not urban only, but has some great insights. Another one is that they have identified again the challenges and opportunities. And for both here examples, you can see that they try to really think about what's most salient for ASEAN countries. So I think that's an important translation effort. Looked at a lot of case studies as well, some fact sheets, etc. Some of you on the webinar may have been part of this effort. I have not. I'm bringing it up also because I'm sure there are challenges, limitations, so it would be great also to discuss that in the webinar, knowing that it's an important new resource available to us. But nature-based solutions are not a panacea. And so I wanted to move on to perhaps looking at what are the key challenges that we face. So first, nature-based solutions are not new. And here, this is an example of the first tree planting day in Singapore in the 1960s, making the point that they're not new. And my argument here is that if they were the panacea, maybe we would not face all these problems because they're not new. So they would have time to provide all these benefits and solve all these problems. So we do know that there are multiple barriers: institutional, policy, operational barriers. I won't detail them so much because, again, in this report that I just mentioned, funded by the European Union, they highlight quite a lot of these, as well as the enablers for effective nature-based solution implementation. So rather, in the last few minutes that I have, I'll share a case study that we have worked on in Bangkok, Thailand, with the lab. It's looking at upgraded informal settlements. And the context here is to look at the Ban Mang Kong program, which is a social housing upgrading of informal settlement program. Not only actually it's rural and urban, but there's a part in urban Bangkok. And the success of this program really heavily relies on a lot of these initiatives being bottom up. So the communities rely on self-organized committees who are responsible for allocating the funds, for planning the implementation and repaying the low-interest loans. So there's a lot of bottom-up, even if the program is also institutionally and nationally supported. So when we looked and were in conversation with our collaborators, looking and visiting some of the communities, we saw a lot of what we would call nature-based solutions. These patches of grass here, but also things like this that are also arguably nature in these communities. This is a shrine, a termite mound turned shrine in one of the communities. So what we have done for the past 2 to 3 years is quite a few projects. I'll highlight one here, where we interviewed residents in 3 communities, aiming to understand how people relate to and manage nature. So fast forward with the content analysis, we were able to identify different nature perspectives. Some people highlighted that they really enjoyed the shading and cooling from nature. Others were able to identify the shared time with others, intergenerational connections when they were caring to their, attending to their potted plants in front of their house. Others may be more prone to think about nature and biodiversity that we should protect. So in this work, we went one step further and tried to identify archetypes of community members who featured such or such traits and attitudes toward nature. So what does this tell us? The idea is really to think about, for different people, different community members, the nature-based solution that is most valued may look very different. Community gardens versus your own little front yard, etc. And so this was essentially the first phase of the project. We have conducted workshops. We have a next one coming next week to really help support a policy framework to think about nature-based solution institutionalization in this type of program. And so that is where the other part of the equation, which is the technical modeling, understanding where some parts of the city are hotter than others. This is an example from a different city, but the point here that I want to illustrate is that there are tools, Invest being one that we use a lot in my lab, but there are many mapping tools that help understand also where solutions might be more needed because it's hotter, because the flood risk is greatest, because the biodiversity corridors may be needed in one area. So this is the other part of the planning process that one can take into account. So lessons from the case study, and I'm looking at the time, so I'll have 2 more minutes, Mukund, if that's okay. So technical tool exists. That's what I briefly mentioned at the end of the one case study, but mostly no one-size-fits-all nature-based solution. This is because there are wide differences in contexts, whether you are doing like city level planning versus you're a community architect supporting a community in developing their own nature-based solution projects. Also because these community members' individual preferences may vary, as I showed from the study, the research we've done. So this means an extremely important focus on co-production and inclusion. We cannot plan these nature-based solutions without understanding these dynamics. And so this to perhaps take a step back and think about what this means. This is a take on the Arnstein's ladder of participation, for those of you who might be familiar, looking at how to approach participation in communities. And for nature-based solutions, we were suggesting in this perspective paper that this idea of just replicating, taking a green park that you've seen in Singapore, say, replicating in one area, may very likely not reap the benefits that you intend. In contrast, more co-design and transforming communities and urban planning via these nature-based solutions would be the higher levels of participation and expected benefits. So with that, I'll just come back to this first statement. We're building the cities of tomorrow today. And to me, the work that we do in the lab really helps shine a light, at least, on the value of understanding these different futures when it comes to nature. So here on these final slides, what we propose in the lab is to really think about the different types of nature that we want in cities. It can be a more nature for society, really focusing on ecosystem services. It can also take different forms. If we are more nature for nature, we may actually want more urban forests, lots of biodiversity. We may also want more community gardens, nature as culture. And I think none of them are better than the others, but understanding these different perspectives will really help building those cities of the future that provide ecosystem services, but also supporting biodiversity and enhancing good quality of life. So with that, thank you very much for your attention. This is the link to the research that we do in the lab. And obviously, I would not do any of this really without a great team. And I look forward to questions and the rest of the webinar with you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hamal, for that insightful and thought-provoking keynote presentation. I hope now all of our participants are familiar with the concept of NBS. We would now go ahead with the second audience poll before moving to the panel discussion. This poll aims to capture participants' perspectives on the implementation and scaling of NBS in cities. Please complete the poll in next 30 to 40 seconds. I would request my colleague to stop the poll and show the results. So we see that 100% of the participants have answered. That's great. And majority of them has chosen urban flooding and extreme heat as the major climate challenge that the NBS should prioritize in ASEAN cities. So with this, we move ahead with the panel discussion segment, which would be moderated by Professor Babel. Professor Babel, over to you.
Thank you, Srijita. Now we move to segment 3, which is panel discussion. And I think I would like to thank Dr. Perrin for setting the scene and giving some very good examples, and also looking into what has worked, what has not worked, what are the various multiple benefit of NBS, and also the perspective from different aspects. Now, I have a pleasure to kind of briefly introduce you the 4 panelists, we have Dr. Dong Wang from China. He is the Deputy Director of the Nature-Based Solution Innovation Center. We have Dr. Sofia Castello. She is the Technical Advisor at Think City, Malaysia. We have Mr. Pakasem Tongchai, Program Officer for Water and Wetlands at IUCN Asia Regional Office in Bangkok. And we have Mr. Stefan Rao. He's a Principal Urban Development Specialist with Asian Development Bank. So you would see that these four panelists are really covering all the main stakeholders which are necessary for implementation and scaling nature-based solutions. So what we are going to do through this panel discussion is we will kind of run 3 rounds with them. The first round will be more on the evidence from the practice. All 4 panelists have been extensively working on nature-based solution in Asia, and especially in Southeast Asia, also in China, and there's a lot of learning from them. The first round will be looking at evidence from based on their experiences. The second round will be on enabling conditions and barriers. So what really has worked, how it has worked, what were the additional kind of challenges we still have to address. And the third round will be on scaling pathways. How do we move forward from here? What are the kind of real, practical, actionable kind of recommendations which can come based on experiences of our 4 panelists? So what I would request is asking Dr. Dong Wang to tell us, based on his extensive experience working on Sponge City concept, not only in China, also across the globe, including Bangkok, where this Benjakiti Park design was led by Dr. Wang. I request him to share his experiences with respect to what are the evidences which are available, which are present, which can take this case of NBS strong for policy and implementation. Dr. Wang.
Okay, can you please share my slides? Yeah, next please. Yeah, I'll introduce a little bit about the Sponge City. This idea first invented by our founder, Professor Kong Jianyu, in 2003, and it became a Chinese national policy from 2014. And in recent years, we upgraded it into a Sponge Planet. It's a land-based, water-driven, holistic solution. Next, its philosophy is to retain water at the source, slow down the water flow, and embrace water at the sink. You can see it's totally opposite to the conventional gray infrastructure. Next, please. And here's the case and its performance. This one is in Dong'an Wetland Park in Sanya City, Hainan Island, the only tropical area in China, very similar climate with ASEAN city countries. This is a Sponge City master plan for the whole city to see where the flood could happen. You know, water is not greedy. It don't need that much of land, so no need to fight with water. Wherever water and city conflict, those are the area we need to fix, like acupuncture. So next, please. So you can see minimal intervention, and our solution is quite simple. Terracing the slope, pounding the ground, islanding the water, islanding the lake, all nature-based. Next, please. 1 year, only 1 year, we executed this project. This is in process. And next, please. And yeah, and it's today. You can see here, this is in before flood, drought. Next, and this is now. Yeah, and next, please. And you can see in before how much flood took over the city. People complained, the property value downgraded. Only 5 years later, you can see here, the city got developed on this area and the flood problem got solved. Next, please. And during the heavy storm of 16 inches per day, 2024, the park soaked up all the rainwater like a giant sponge and keep the city from being flooded. And the people could still use the park because of the skywalk. So I think the fact that NBS projects have withstood one extreme weather event after another is a very clear proof. Yeah, that's my 2 minutes sharing.
Thank you, Dr. Dong, for very impressive examples where the sponge city concept was implemented and various benefits in terms of flood management was depicted very clearly. I like to ask Dr. Sophia. She has an extensive experience on managing heat. Sophia, please tell us, based on your experiences, what are the evidences which can really be taken up further, and how do we prove that they are really effective? These NBS initiatives which you have been working with. Sophia, your turn, please.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the invite. Good afternoon, Dr. Babel, fellow panelists, and the participants in the workshop. So can you please share my screen? I'm going to talk about the impact of street trees on urban temperature reduction. And this is because street trees can be planted in very dense urban areas, which are the areas that are hotter because the urban heat island effect is higher. And it's basically a simple equation. The trees block the solar radiation from reaching the hard surfaces, but also they capture solar energy and convert it into chemical energy via photosynthesis. And this is important because if you have a canopy, the canopy retains the heat. So the street trees really transform the heat into a material, physical element. Next. Next, please. Okay, so this is surface remote sensing data on surface temperatures, in which we can see the urban heat island effect and also some increasing temperatures. Next. We can identify these linear patterns. We, as humans, we can instinctively identify these as tree-lined streets. Next. In Penang, we've also mapped surface temperatures ground level with thermal imaging, and we can see here a difference of almost 40 degrees Celsius in a green area and an area with no trees. So this is very substantial, also because the people walking the streets are the most vulnerable. The wealthy or the middle class usually drives by car. Next. So this is some research I published on the impact of street trees on temperature reduction in a nature-based climate adaptation program in Georgetown, the PNB CAP. And we can see different typologies of street trees. Just one tree, there's a street with 3 rows of trees. Next. And we can see that in 30 years, we can reach a maximum temperature reduction of 7 degrees Celsius. So this can actually safeguard our Southeast Asian cities from the wet bulb threshold. The minimum temperature reduction verified was 3 degrees Celsius on the specific orientation street with just 1 row of trees. Next. So this is an example. This is the street that has 3 rows of trees, and the temperature reduction is already 2 degrees Celsius. We're talking about atmosphere temperatures here. Only 6 years after planting, just because it's 3 rows. Next.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, please be mindful that you need to plant the right tree. You cannot plant fast-growing trees in or big trees in streets, particularly in Southeast Asia, because trees go plants grow very quickly. I hope I haven't gone through my time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sophia. It's very interesting to see that the role of trees in the urban settings can reduce the temperature by 7 degrees. Very, very impressive. Especially in the Southeast Asian environment where temperatures are really increasing. Now, I'd like to take you through Thailand, where Mr. Pakasem from IUCN would tell us his experiences with respect to NBS at river basin scale. Yes, Dr.
Sure.
Pakasem, please.
Thank you so much. So next slide. So because of the 2 minutes, I have to present the case that I think have been some implementation on that. So I'm gonna go you to the things we call oxbow lakes. Yeah, for people who not might know, I show you some kind of 3D model that I made to communicate with the people who are on the Oxbow Lakes near the project. So this is a project funded by Adaptation Fund and a team. We are looking for climate resilience for flood and drought. So when we look into the city called in Roi Et province, we saw that the wetlands, there's a lot of wetland, big wetland next to the river called Yang River. So after I saw that, we going to see how the wetland works in the area. As you can see that the river in front and then some oxbow lake look like the lake in the picture. So next slide. So just a little bit to everyone to know about the ecosystem services of the Oxbow Lake is an integral part of the river and floodplain system in the world. So when we talk about the river, we need to think more than just the channel, but the corridor of it. So when we working on nature-based solution, not just focus on the channel, we focus on the interaction between the river and the floodplain. So here's some image from the textbooks about some kind of the process of ecosystem flow between the river and the wetland. Next slide. Okay, so I'm zooming to some kind of the idea. So in the site that after we survey from the map, it look pretty healthy, look pretty green. But when we use some kind of a topographical map and from the field survey, we saw that the Oxbow Lakes had been disconnected from the river during the flood season for many years because of the development of the road system. So imagine like if you are in a pretty dense urban area, you want to go in to see the river and you want to park the car, so you build the road of it. So that's the same things happen in Thailand. When you build the road, cut to the wetland, you block the hydrologies of it. So as you can see, I point on the red arrow on the blockage between the river and the floodplain. Next slide. Okay, so yeah, thank you, Perrin, for showing the NBS catalog because I also use this reference too. So if you see that in the World Bank catalog, there are some implementation if you look at the ecosystem called river floodplains. So one of the catalog that they mentioned is the river bypass or oxbows. So the same thing that happened to the case study that I show you. So we're gonna reconnect the river and floodplain. Next slide. And then as you can see that before we try to test on that, we saw that it looked like a pretty green because of no water going in. So the grass is over top because of the water is pretty low, no connect for many years. Next slide. And then last year, my colleague suggested the DWR, the Department of Water Resource, to remove some of the blockage and let the water flow. So we begin to do that during the July last year, and then the water flow back into the wetlands again. Next slide. So yeah, we developed something, not just the ecosystem service on the flood and drought. We want to see the water quality, the biodiversity of the site. So we call the area as a Kutpeng area on the middle column. And then we have to have something we call reference site, the site that have more better ecological integrity. So we try to restorations the oxbow that we do that you see in the previous slide and the oxbow that have a healthy state to see what they are working now. So we are developing with Department of Water Resource to see what the intervention if we do the bigger things on that. Next slide. And then for the last slide, just to show you that not just the thing that I show on biodiversity. So if you look at to the catalog, there already list some ecosystem service or the benefits that we help. So for example, riverine flood risk reduction, water quality, sedimentation, some carbon sequestration, tourism, resource, and history. So we also working to develop more interventions on that. So I'm working with the team to remove the blockage, building the bridge instead of the road to let the water going into the wetland easily. Thank you so much. This is end of my slide.
Thank you, Kun Pakasem, of giving this very interesting example of how to kind of rejuvenate the Oxbow Lake and connect river and the floodplains. There are two very good examples. I'd like to move to our colleague from ADB, Stephen, who is going to tell us something more about nature-based solution in Southeast Asian countries and China. Stephen, over to you.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you so much for this kind invitation. So at the Asian Development Bank, we really value nature-based solutions and investments in nature for the many reasons that we have already heard about, and also because nature-based solutions always generate and deliver a multitude of ecosystem services simultaneously. So it's always a good investment where when you integrate it well into urban planning and both as climate mitigation, climate adaptation, and also for the benefit of biodiversity and people, every dollar you invest delivers a multitude of dollars of benefits, both economic benefits, resilience benefits, and also climate mitigation benefits. What you see here is a project that that was part of the first Sponge City pilot in China, in the People's Republic of China, in Jiangxi province in Pingxiang. And you see that we used a low-lying river park that was developed to deliver flood risk resilience and also, of course, the benefit of having a beautiful river park. Next slide, please. With people reporting to be happy after we asked that when the project was completed last year. They said there were no more floodings after that, and before they had basically floodings every year, every 2 or 3 years, with severe impacts. And the project really was quite had a high level of efficacy. We did a climate risk and vulnerability assessment at the beginning with models and calibrating it with the real data from the rivers. Next slide, please. We designed. We assessed first the biodiversity of the plants and the animals, both in the water and outside of the water, and then we designed for native species. Next slide, please. We have used similar concepts like this Oxbow river idea that was just presented for the case of Thailand, where we also created wetlands along rivers, and in the flood season, the wetlands would be totally flooded, and in the dry season, people can enjoy the park as a park. Next slide, please. When you integrate nature-based solutions with general urban planning and urban design, I think then you can achieve even more benefits. So, for example, here we had a project in the northeast of China, in the province of Jilin, in Yanji city, where we anchored urban planning into retrofitting a city with a major public transportation infrastructure that was also integrated with green and gray infrastructure, with more transportation for bicycles and for pedestrians, and then green spaces along this corridor, but also along the rivers and between this corridor and the rivers. Next slide, please. So we created a public master plan that integrated transit-oriented development, and then, oh, sorry, no, this is too far. Can you go back, please? Yeah. Yeah, this is good. So we developed a master plan that helped the whole city improve, and then we also developed a sponge city master plan for the north part of the city, and we applied advanced hydraulic and hydrological modeling, and basically through our measures of applying sponge city nature-based solutions as an integrated approach, we were also delivering flood risk free environments of this place. I think for the first part, this is the end of my first part. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefan, of emphasizing on how to integrate NBS in urban planning with transport system and coming up with this master plan of sponge city concept. I think these are the two main key takeaways from what you have presented. Now, before I go to the next round of discussions, which is more on enabling conditions and barriers, I'd like to remind all our participants to please put forward your questions in the Q&A box. And also, I would like to request our esteemed panelists and other speakers, whoever you feel like responding to these questions without disturbing our panel, please do so. Also, so that it becomes more interactive with the participants. Let me take you to the second round where we would like to identify what makes a nature-based solution succeed or fail, or what are the limitations, what are the challenges. We like to look into that aspect. What are the most critical enabling conditions which really helped these? And there are many such examples which were presented in first round by all our four panelists, that how they have addressed the flooding issues, the heat issues. Not only these, but there are many other benefits which have been identified. Let me start with again Dr. Dong Wang to tell us what really this concept of NBS, especially your sponge city concept, became successful. Dong,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. I think one of the challenge is that not everyone trusts NBS. Some people, including some decision makers, even think NBS as great decoration for conventional gray infrastructure. Could you please open my slides? Yeah, every year, almost $2 trillion invested from the government, from ADB, from the World Bank, even from the AIIB. They're still doing this kind of solutions. Yeah, and we are still building this kind of walls, the flood walls in Malaysia, Indonesia, in China, of course, trying to protect the city from being flooded. They will fail and fail with disaster. Next, please. You can see they failed in Kenya. Next. They failed in Saudi Arabia. Next, please. Here in Brazil. And next. This is in Zhengzhou. Yeah, more than 300 people died in this disaster. Next, please. Meanwhile, they produce like 8% of carbon emission. Next, please. So why they failed? Why the conventional gray infrastructure failed? When we look at, just look at when they first invented. They are first invented in European countries. We call it industrialized facility, industrialized infrastructure. The European countries, their climate, very mild climate, very comfortable climate. The precipitation every year, every month, almost the same. I just come back from the Milan yesterday. The 5 inches precipitation maximum there. That's why the concrete wall, the pipe system works. But now they failed today. Next, please. You can see they failed in New York because of the climate change. Next. But for other part of the world, it's disaster. For New York, the failure is just about comfortability, but for other parts of the world, it's disaster. It's an issue of survival. Next. You can see we have totally different climate compared with the European countries. Next. Yeah, but for all, next please. But for all those part of the world, all those cities, we copy the same kind of infrastructure. We call it gray infrastructure. They are basically colonized by these technologies, colonized everywhere. 80% of the global south actually use the same infrastructure, but facing totally different kind of climate. So we call it monsoon-like climate, flood, drought every year. So that's a survival issue. Next, please. So the new infrastructure we propose, the alternative, is NBS infrastructure, which is critical for securing ecosystem services and can be woven together, can be integrated together with a gray infrastructure, and water is the key. So NBS is not decoration, it really works. Next. This is the case also in Hainan Island, similar climate with your countries, Meishe River in Haikou City. You can see before severe water pollution, inundation. Next. And for the past 20 years, the local government tried to fix it through the conventional solution. You can see the dredging, channelizing, dredging the river, concrete flood wall, but all failed. Next. And the alternative, the solution is dechannelize it, naturalize it, turn gray into green. This is real NBS. Remove the concrete. Next. Terracing the ground, cleaning the urban runoff. Next. Recover the habitat, introducing the idea of sponge. Next. Yeah, this is now. It's a sponge river corridor. Next. You can see this is now. Next, please. Next. Yeah, and you can see this is a nature-based sewage treatment system. You can see here very clear nature, powerful nature. We need to make use of that. Next, please. We also have the performance test. Next. 85% of new nitrogen and phosphorus can be removed by the natural process. Next, please. So, I mean, if you implement the real nature-based solution, it will change everything. But not every people know what is nature-based. So this kind of panel needs to be more. Yeah, that's my, yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Dong, of clearly mentioning that the gray infrastructure have failed. And there are many examples you have shown, and you like to go from gray to green, hard to soft, and straight to mirroring, right? These are the three key messages I can understand. And you are strongly saying that we should remove the concrete. I think this is a very strong sentence. I will take some of the comments from others later on. But let me ask Sophia. Sophia, tell us what really has worked, how that really has worked. What are the key enabling conditions which NBS really succeed? Sophia.
Thank you, Dr. Babel. Can you please share my screen? I must say, I do agree with obviously Dr. Wang. I'm also a landscape architect by training, and also I agree with Perrine Hamel in the sense that nature-based solutions are not the magical solution for our problems. However, let me first go through the critical conditions. So I'm implementing nature-based solutions in Southeast Asia. So these are some very critical, absolutely necessary conditions for success. The first is context-specific design. So importing NBS models doesn't work. We need to work with the specific location and with specific materials, natural materials, and landscape dynamics. It's not only about only the water, only the plants. We need to work with the local territory because sometimes The aquifers are very high. The wind flows, the wind corridors have a specific orientation. It's highly specific. Second, we need a strong community participation as co-implementers. Third, we need the cross-sector governance that is actually working. Because in Southeast Asia and many areas of the globe, government departments work in silos, and this cannot continue for nature-based solutions because they require coordination across many departments. Fourth, finally, long-term ownership and maintenance. You see many nature-based solutions implemented and then they fail because you don't have proper maintenance responsibilities attributed and acknowledged and accepted, because we're talking about living systems. We need people to maintain this. Next slide, please. So basically the main barriers for successful NBS, nature-based solutions implementation, are the failure of the four previous ones, lack of technical knowledge, and we're talking about real technical knowledge that understands not only the plants or the water, but has a holistic understanding of the dynamics of landscape. So the lack of technical knowledge, the lack of community involvement, fragmented governance, and clearly defined maintenance responsibilities. But there is more than this. So we have in Southeast Asia and many areas across the globe, short-term political scenarios. So we have 4 years of a government and also limited funding cycles. And nature-based solutions are here for the long term and need to be thought of for the long term. Second, we have finance structures that don't exactly fit nature-based solutions. They tend to promote gray infrastructure. Mr. Stephen Rao can, of course, give it more information about this. And then we have feasibility in design. It's very common also to see very fancy, high-tech green walls that, from my experience, my more than 20 years of experience, fail and get replaced in a short time because they're very expensive to maintain. So we need low-tech green solutions. And we need an approach that is that works with the community and can be accepted, and whose responsibility can actually, the maintenance can actually shift, but with commitment. And finally, there's an implementation gap. We see a breakdown. We see everywhere a breakdown between policy ambition and delivery capacity. Finally, I must say that nature-based solutions we're all talking about projects. Even myself, I'm talking about my project. But we need to talk about nature-based solutions as processes embedded in systems. And we need to think seriously, and even from a philosophical standpoint, of what we're talking about. We're talking about revising the way we live in the world and integrate it with nature. And nature-based solutions can bring us a little bit closer to this, reconnecting us with our kinship with the natural world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sophia, really pointing out the most important aspect of lack of maintenance. NBS is a process, and a program is not a project of a short duration. How do we link it to the short-term political cycle? And we should go for what we call low-tech green solutions and to improve the implementation gaps. If I have summarized your interventions, like to move to Pakasem. Kun Pakasem, from your perspective, tell us what is really important to have as a given for a successful NBS.
Okay, so yeah, from what I have working closely with Thai government and the project that we got fundings on that, we know that we can present nature-based solution, give a technical advice to the government, but the things that can help the solution in the long term is to have government funding on nature-based solution by themselves. So the thing is like how we can influence the Thai government to understand what is really nature-based solution and what the guideway. As Kun Dongwang and Kun Sophia mentions about, like the thing is like the gray infrastructure already have the blueprint for them for a very long time. When you try to input something new, you have to make sure that it's not cause the severe effect or it's come back to the same outcome. For example, like the news that I just read, some things like in England, I thought this problem has been mainly in Thailand, but when I look into the EU country, like UK, they also same problem about like the funding in their local government also low. For example, if you want to invest on nature-based solution, one thing that you need to know is you need to build capacity on the people who work on nature. Not only the engineers, not only the people, but people who work in nature have an important role to work integrate with the engineer. So for example, like if your country can have some more funding to help them, for example, like in this case, if you know that the local authorities on working on nature know about the floodplain, know about the nature in the city, you can help funding them to have work to do to build the law, something like that. And for the next slide, next slide. Okay, so for the things that I left on the diagram on the left side is talking about principle urban nature-based solution, which I lead 3 years ago. And I think the one word that I can give in terms of institutional arrangement is the word called patch dependency. Like every city in Thailand or in every country, when we have some disturbance happen, for example, flooding, people will choose the gray infrastructure because of the patch dependency. For example, like if you have something happen and you don't know what to do next, but you know that building the dam, create a levee is the part practice decision. And when you do that, you also get the same outcomes. And if you ignore the situation like climate change, the things are going to happen even worse. And you ignore the present condition, you can get the same outcome. So this is the thing that I want to remind everyone that working in terms of like urban nature-based solution to think about like not just the part practice that you always have. You need to think more and funding more on the people who work on nature. They can help you even some small area, they can show you the benefit of nature-based solution clearly. So this is what I found from my experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Kun Pakasem, on emphasizing on the sustained funding from the government sectors and also not relying on the past practices and coming up with some innovative solutions, innovative approaches to address the challenges which are taking a new shape in terms of climate change, with climate change happening there. Good. So we move to Stefan. Stefan, tell us same question to you also. That tell us what are the key conditions which can favor adoption of nature-based solution.
Yes, I think some of those things that I will also say were already mentioned by Dr. Wong and also by our colleague Sophia. And I think proof of concept, we know it works, but I think it still has to be more disseminated that green infrastructure, nature-based solutions actually work and that they are really infrastructure, just as gray infrastructure. And Dr. Wang mentioned that a lot, and also Sophia, that really more has to be done to drive that home. And I think also what Sophia mentioned is that the solutions that we provide have to be maintainable and have to be sustainably maintainable. Operating costs, maintenance costs have to be low. So you have to have localized solutions and not something that's really unsustainable and expensive. Sorry, the next slide would show a bit more of that. So many officials still believe that infrastructure needs to be gray. They have a short, what Professor Babel also mentioned, they have a short, like a mayor has an assignment depending on the country, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. They want to see something. It's easier to build. You see something. Yeah, you see a big bridge and a big road. It takes longer to see the green infrastructure. And although it's not true if we follow Dr. Wang's example in Hainan that they built in just a few years. Next slide, please. I think it's also important that we consider really the integrated approach that was also mentioned by Sophia. We need to work across disciplines, across departments, and the reality is just still that people work within their own local administrative bureaus or departments, and we really need them to work in an integrated way and approach holistically solutions, because only with holistic solutions we can also really reap the multiple benefits. Next slide. We have like one of the beauties is that there's also health benefits, of course, of all these nature-based solutions and the green parks that we deliver through these nature-based solutions. And in ADB, we have developed the concept of healthy and age-friendly cities, where we make health impact assessments and then also proactively create healthy and age-friendly city action plans, and we integrate those with nature-based solutions, because I think it's important when we work across disciplines, we need to find topics that bring people around the table. And nobody can say anything about biodiversity, nobody can say anything against health. So people will come to the table if we find the right topics and the right meanings and the right outcomes. And that also will facilitate nature-based solutions in the future. Next slide. I think it's also important that we have a bigger picture. We create large-scale strategies and support regional and create support on regional, national and regional levels. So in ADB, we're promoting something that we call the Regional Flyway Initiative, where the migratory birds fly from New Zealand through Australia, Southeast Asia, along the China coast to Alaska. And we create a program for it, and then we have different countries make projects and programs to support it. I think to embed it, creating regional and global public goods can also be an enabler, an enabling funding enabler for larger programs and then leading into projects. Next slide. So these larger programs can then also lead to investment projects where we conserve biodiversity, wetlands, and so forth. So we have a project with 2 wetlands, just as an example, to bring regional programs into local actions. Next slide, please. So enabling local projects through a bigger picture. Of course, climate change and resilience is always a localized benefit, but if we bring in this bigger picture, that can also be an enabling factor. So here in China, for example, regional flyway and biodiversity is supported greatly also by a whole range of activities of wetland conservation and protection and so forth that we also build into. Next slide, please. So this shows where how we preserve a wetland in the Minjiangkou River estuary in Fuzhou, in Fuzhou City in Fujian Province, and then yeah, I think that's all for this round. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We would like to move to the round number 3 because of interest in of the time. We are behind schedule by about 5 minutes. I would really request all the panelists to be very specific in next 1 to 2 minutes only. Tell us, what do you think based on the evidences you have put forward, the kind of enabling conditions and the requirements which you have said for the successful scaling up of nature-based solutions. What do you think one practical and actionable pathway to mainstream? So many of the examples have already said this, that how do we really, like Stephen mentioned about, we should have a large scale strategies where we have local actions. So this is kind of a practical recommendation. So I would like to have one practical recommendation from all of you. Either you use your slides, or if you would like to just speak out, you may like to do that. And I will again start with Dr. Wang. Dr. Wang, please.
Yeah, I'll use slides. Actually, I'm very agreeing with Professor Sophia he mentioned previously. So the climate crisis is urgent, and funding is so limited, so that we need a fast, low cost, low maintenance, and easy to construct pathway. So that's what our team had done for past 28 years. We got inspiration from the monsoon culture. Remember, the most part of the world is actually under influenced already for hundreds of thousands of years. This kind of climate change experience. You can see like the farmers. Next, please. This picture shows the Chinese farmers. Next. They terracing the slope up on the mountain 200,000 above the sea level. Keep retain every drop of rainwater. Yeah, next please. And you can see they cultivate the marsh in the delta area by ponding, diking, islanding. We create a sustainable living environment for hundreds of thousands of years. And this experience is not just in China. You can find this ancient wisdom in many countries, including Southeast Asian countries. Next, please. Now we have new technologies, we have new science. So we develop and upgrade this traditional wisdom into this nature-based primitive technologies into replicable design engineering modules with scientific method and proof, and apply them to modern ecological engineering in large scale. That's what our team had done for the past years. And such as next piece. And this technology such as terracing, ponding, diking, islanding. Those are all come from the ancient wisdom. Next, please. And this can transform the global surface at speed and fast and inexpensive. Next, please. Yeah, those are all our former project. And next, please. And this is the case. The Banjargiti Forest Park in Bangkok is, I think it's such a demonstration of the sponge planet. We finished this project during the COVID-19 pandemic, altogether 18 months from design to construction. We transformed an abandoned tobacco factory, a brown field, into a vibrant park and urban ecological infrastructure in central Bangkok through nature-based solutions. Next, please. Yeah, and you can see it's quite beautiful. Huh? And the average budget is less than $20 per square meter. It's less than a quarter of the typical investment, but the performance is quite good. Next, please. It can not only retain up to 200,000 cubic meters of storm water, but also can purify more than 8,000 cubic meters of water from the poised grade 5 to grade 3 per day. Next, please. And people like it, and the birds coming back. They told me more than 200 species of birds have been observed in just 1 year. Next, please. Yeah, so you can see to scaling up, one is education. We need to have this kind of panels or even other things more and more. And the other thing is, like I mentioned before, the implementation, the way how we construct, how we implement the nature-based solution must be fast, low cost, low maintenance, and easy to construct. And so we need to find from the past, from the ancient wisdom, that everyone, even the farmers can do the job. So this case, Banjargiti, they did not implement by the skilled landscape workers, implement by the soldiers. So because of our simple solution, even the soldier can do the job. Yeah, that's what I want to tell. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wang, for giving this beautiful example of Benjakiti Park. I'd like to move to our next speaker. Sophia, please.
Yes, please. Can you please share my screen? Okay, thank you. Well, this question occupied my life for 2 years, and I published research on this, how to design a knowledge transfer model for accelerating urban climate adaptation. Because you see all these platforms like AP Plat and so on, but people don't use it. Next. So we've developed this framework, very simple as possible, a 3-step annual program. It's called the Malaysia Adaptation Sharing Hub, known as MASH. So we have the network partners, local governments, scientific institutions, and communities. And we have the three steps is vulnerable communities engagement first. The second most important step, two-day meeting discussing the challenges and policies, potential policies. And the third is an online meeting in which each city, each local government announces two policies for climate adaptation. Next. So we have between 10, before that, please. We have between 10 and 14 city governments, 4 to 5 state governments, 6 to 8 scientific institutions, and 8 to 12 civil society organizations. Next. So we already had our first cycle of mass in October 2024. It was a success. Very happy to share that. Next. So the outcomes and impacts. Each city, each partner city adopted 2 new adaptation policies, strengthened adaptive capacity and social resilience, promoting NBS as a mainstream urban planning strategy, scaling up adaptation, and also contributed to the National Adaptation Plan. Next. The main effective strategies in adaptation mainstreaming have to do with cooperative work. You've seen, I have a lot to share, but I don't have time. There's a paper going to be published soon. We need to have multi-level governance, community participation, and so on. Next. So these are the initiatives announced by the local governments. Next. And 14 policies were announced. Next. 6 of which NBS. But it was incredible, the discussion and the understanding, and also the cities discussing. Some cities have very low capacity and others very high capacity. And the sharing of the same problems is incredibly beneficial. I'm very happy to share this example. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia. I think what you have been recommending is kind of a coming up with a network of the partners in the form of Malaysia Adaptation Sharing Hub, right? Thank you
Yes.
very much. That's a good recommendation. Pakasem, what is your takeaway
Okay.
message?
Yeah, so I have only one slide and I think one image didn't show up. So, okay, that's fine. So at the end of the things like relating to the project and relate to my work that I'm working on the project called Urban Resilience, I like the word that mentions about like when it comes to the urban area, the world's potential or disturbance like flooding, heat, and anything in urban, it seems to have two mechanisms that we respond to them. Either we go resistant or we go resilience with them. For example, like the image that I show you is the image in the Sukhothai city in Thailand, which is they use resistance instead of resilient. For example, they try to build more concrete wall, try to contain the water into the channel. They don't want the water to go into the place that they used to go. So this is the resistance system. And the image that didn't show, but the text said that in the example like Chiang Rai flood in 1971, which is many years ago, is the area that the city had also have a lot of wetland and the floodplain that can absorb the flooding. You can imagine when the water comes, it's overflowing to the floodplain, it receives the flooding. So, but now in 2026, after the big flood 2 years ago, the city decided to build more flood wall because they want to resist the flood, and they see that the water going out of the channel is the problem. So that's the way of thinking in terms of philosophical question of the city, how much we can have water going to, how much we can control them. So this is the things that I think it relates to the name of the project, like climate adaptation and resilience. This is the things that, yeah, the key things when we it will come to two things when we talk to the decision maker. You want to get more resistant or you want to get more resilience. You have to choice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. High resistance or high resilience. Very good.
Yeah.
Excellent. Stephen, I like to ask you, what is your recommendation? Also, can you also
Yes.
give some highlight on
Yeah.
the
I have
most of the
three slides with brief messages.
most of these projects, how do you see that they are socially inclusive, gender sensitive, because that's a very important, because the community and the people, they are poor people, are disproportionately impacted by climate risk. So can you also give some highlight on that based on your experiences, please?
Yeah. Thank you, Professor Babel. I think this is a very important aspect. Like based on our project experience with this, please also show my slides. Please also, like the social inclusion aspect is really very critical, because and in fact, what we find is that when these nature-based solutions are implemented well, they really create a lot of benefits from all these different ecosystem service benefits that they provide: flood risk reduction, extreme urban heat reduction, improved air quality, water quality, improved microclimate, and so forth, and of course also the beautiful parks and the community spaces that they get. So we have a very positive experience from that, including you can involve them in maintaining nature-based solutions over the long term. That will also create jobs for the local community and so forth, not only during construction but also during the maintenance over the many years that you have. But what I want to say also is that scaling urban resilient and nature-based solutions needs a learning, sharing strategy and policy, very similar to what Sophia has mentioned. So we had the privilege of helping the Thai government to develop a sponge city program for the country that was delivered last year with technical guidelines and policy recommendations. We had also 5 pilot cities where we tested that. You can see them here. And this was delivered for the NESDC, for the National Economic and Social Development Council. They used it as part of the 14th five-year plan in Thailand, and also part of the urbanization strategy. And funding is also very important. So sustainable, or at least some initial funding for government nationwide, so that cities can really on the local level start planning and then implement some of these programs to scale up. Next, please. Another important aspect of scaling urban resilience is global cooperation and commitment. Of course, we have the global community with IPCC and so forth, providing all these guidelines, including of turning gray into green and so forth. That is very important. So global cooperation, commitments, and I think what I want to mention also for our Thailand work, from the beginning we said you have to integrate the new green with the existing gray and improve the gray. And I think that's Dr. Wang also mentioned earlier, and with his beautiful diagram that he showed. Next. So my last slide is, I think scaling resilience and nature-based solutions also needs effective mechanisms and multi-level integration. And I think that's also something that Sophia has mentioned. So we and Dr. Wang and also Pakasem, we have to have a mechanism where we develop policies, we regulate and enforce, we fund and implement, learn and revise, and then we learn from evidence, and then we do this in a circle. And we don't just do this in a circle locally, but we scale this up. We learn locally, and then we give the knowledge back up to the regional and national and even the global communities, so that we can progress fast. Of course, we know we need those things yesterday, not today and tomorrow. I want to do one more comment on Professor Perrine's comment about we build the cities today for tomorrow. Yes, I think it's important to note that many of the cities are already built. Most of the cities are already built. Yeah. So we need to retrofit existing urban areas to be resilient, and to implement and retrofit through nature-based solutions is very challenging. Yeah, because there's existing land ownership patterns, land uses, and so forth. But this is very important that we also do that. Yeah. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephen. I take your words: learning, sharing, developing strategies and policies. Right. So learning, sharing, strategy, and policy. I think we have reached to a point where we can move to the next segment, where we like to interact with the participants. I like to also ask all the participants, please put your questions in Q&A box so that we can take them up. We'll go for a poll 3. which is to be launched now. Srijita, can you launch the poll 3, please? So we like to ask all the participants to please provide your answer to this a simple question based on what you have heard and what you have your own experiences. What should be the top priority to accelerate NBS implementation in ASEAN cities? Please, you have about 30 to 40 seconds. Okay, let's close this poll. And Srijita, can you show the results? Okay, I think based on the feedback we received from the participants, 36, 1/3 people say that we need stronger urban policies. Somehow, investment, capacity development, community participation, and more pilot projects and evidence generation is more or less equal, 14 to 18%. Thank you very much. It gives a kind of a understanding that urban policies are very, very important to move towards integrating NBS in cities. Thank you very much. I like to now request, we are behind schedule by almost 20 minutes, but I think we can bear with time. And I would request Dr. Victor to take up at least, let's say, 5 questions from the list of about 30 plus questions we have.
Mhm.
Yes, Victor.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much, Professor Babel. And I think this was a very fascinating round of conversation that we had. I just want to kind of highlight one statement that came up in the in the question and answer session, which is not necessarily a question, but in so many ways it exemplifies what we are talking about today. And the person mentioned that I want to emphasize that the landscape approach in implementing NBS is really important. Looking at NBS through a ridge to reef lens. In so many ways, it actually suggests that NBS cannot be looked at in isolation, but you kind of have to look at the entire system, in order for it to bear, the intended results that it has. So with that, I've kind of looked at one question per speaker, to begin with, the first one is for Dr. Perrine, and the question is that are there any mandatory components in terms of ecological principles or social core benefits that distinguish NBS from conventional environmental approaches?
Yes.
This is for Perrine.
Yeah. Thank you. That is a good question, and there are perhaps two ways of answering it. One is to go to the definition and some major frameworks, and I'll use here the ASEAN standard for nature-based solutions. I mentioned it, I think for the landscape scale that you just mentioned, it is absolutely valid. It is not specifically urban, so there are components that are more or less salient. But something to remember from this framework is that 2 out of the 8 criteria are about 1, the response to an existing societal challenge, and 2, the net positive biodiversity impact. And so I think that's one that is often ignored, either consciously or not, in urban environments, because we don't think of cities as providing habitat as a main component, but it is in the IUCN definition, and to me that's something to remember. So we don't create more problems with presumably solutions that bring green in the city. By this I mean either invasive species or non-native species that can bring other problems with them. So perhaps that's one point to emphasize. The second way of answering this question is that there were some questions on this in the Q&A already. It really depends on the context again, and the existing policies and safeguards, perhaps in an existing city, and the existing practice. If we're talking about urban water management, nature-based solutions, there may be a sponge city type guide already that has its own recommendations, and so practitioners are used to that, and taking that into account, in my view, is really important, because you don't want like 5 years or 10 years of progress in one direction to be also confusing with like a new set of directions. I hope that helps answer the question.
No, absolutely. I think that is a very well answered question, and thank you also, for being so active on the Q&A box and answering, some of those questions. Thank you so much, Perrine, for that. The second question is for Dr. Dong Wang, and I think the question is very, very interesting. The question is that, a common critique, with urban NBS solutions or urban nature-based solutions is the very real risks of green gentrification or greenwashing, as we call it, right? So the question is, does China have any advice in terms of how do we avoid this green gentrification or greenwashing?
Yeah, all the problem you mentioned actually, happened in China also. And, this is a real problem happened. Every construction, I mean, the investment for urban revival or landscape cause this problem. But I think the Chinese government tried to fix it through they shared part of the benefits to the local communities. Yeah, because they occupy their lands, they reuse their lands, so they have to, the stakeholder things. So this is already written in our law. So, yeah, I have to say this is a real problem, but we are trying to fix it. Yes.
Yeah.
Actually,
No,
I'm typing the answer now. So, yeah.
Okay, so I think we'll get a more detailed answer in the chat box as well, right? But thank you very much, Dong, for that. The next question is for Sophia, and I think again a very important question. And I come from I do a lot of work with the government, so I can actually relate to this question very well. So the question is, how do we quantify the impacts or benefits of NBS to better check its success, right? How do we quantify them?
Very good question. There are multiple tools available. I actually mentioned, when I talked about MASH, I mentioned the multiple platforms with the free tools that any local government can use. For example, you have the i3 software that map. I've actually developed it, worked with the software developers created to adapt it to Penang. So it maps pollution reduction and translates it to ringgit. So it translates it into the local currency. It maps the impact of trees in reducing energy consumption through air conditioning, and also in stormwater runoff reduction. And they not only they quantify it in specific units, for example, in CO2, in electric consumption units, and then translated in monetary units. There are multiple softwares and platforms doing this. Main problem is having the knowledge that these tools exist, but there are multiple. I can share here i3. I'll share it in the chat.
Yeah. No, thank you for pointing this out. When you're right, sometimes the knowledge is all out there, but it is not accessible to people, right? So great. Thank you so much for that, Sophie. And please go ahead and share that, in the Q&A session. So our participants will have access to that, right? Okay. The next question is for Pakistan. I think, yeah, you're back. Thank you for that. And I think the question for you, Pakistan, is again very interesting. One of the biggest challenges with NBS, is the operation and maintenance, right? While the initial effort can be done, but it has to be sustained over a period of time, the O&M. So in your view, how should this be approached? Who should be made responsible for the operation and maintenance? And are you aware of any projects that have done this successfully?
Okay, wow, that's a good question. For the case, I didn't have the case in mind that in Thailand, but in other case, from what I see, the thing is like when you doing nature-based solution, the key thing is like you try to get the service from nature. So when you try to show people that nature-based solution have a lot of benefit, you have to measure the ecosystem service of the thing that you done. So the interesting thing and hard things for nature-based solution is like they have multiple benefits. How you can measure the multiple benefit and share to the people before, during, and after the project. I think is the key thing that you can tell people about that to let them know. Compared to the gray infrastructure, they have single benefit from what they do. Like you build a wall, you protect the flooding, but when you build a wetland, you have many benefit about it. And that's the work that people, not just the people who design, who build it, but people who maintain it, maybe some environmental officers or park rangers or anything, that they can understand what you are working and they continue to promote this thing after that. So for example, like if I go to some, I was go to UK, the Olympic Wetland Park. The Olympic had just finished, but what they left is like they recreate the floodplain of the river, and then they have a lot of staff that try to maintain. But when you compare to the green infrastructure, they have the lifetime. But when you compare to green infrastructure, they have some small maintenance of the thing. For example, something like that, that it can be helpful. So promoting nature-based solution is also important work to let people around the city to know what you have done on it. So yeah, monitoring evaluation. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much for that, Pakistan. You're absolutely. I think one of the best ways to kind of promote NBS is to point out to its multifaceted nature. Like you kind of pointed out, a multidimensional benefits that it provides. Okay, just one last question now, and that's for Stephen, and it's a very appropriate question given that you're coming from ADB. The question is, how is the return on investment calculated, while giving out loans, for a nature-based solution project, right? So how does that work?
Thank you. This is a very good question related to a previous question, how we evaluate that. So for every project that ADB is doing, we are financing, a lot of the projects that we're financing, providing public goods. Yeah. And not all the public goods have revenue generation as part of by nature of the project. And here, of course, nature-based solutions, for example, for flood risk resilience, flood risk management, urban heat management, and so forth, don't have direct financial revenue streams. So what we do is we carry out economic analysis, and I think Sophia pointed out to some of this already. And a lot of work has been done in the recent years to improve the methods of economic analysis, so that we can really quantify in an acceptable way by our internal economics departments of World Bank and all the MDBs and so forth, who also cooperated on this effort. To be able to say, okay, we have investments in nature-based solutions, and we make economic impact assessment. We make cost benefit assessments where we can quantify a lot of some of the ecosystem services provided by all these nature-based solutions. Not all, and some of them we're still fighting with our economic departments so that they can accept more benefits also to be quantified, because we have thresholds for economic internal rate of returns when we do projects. But so again, no direct financial revenues, but indirect economic benefits, and they are quite high. So again, if you allow me to report this project in Pingshan that I mentioned, where the people were happy, the government was also happy, because the government reported more people came back. that brings in more taxes, that brings in, so in fact, local government financial streams, and also land value is increased from two or three aspects. Number one, you reduce flood risk, your land value increases. You have a green space, land value increases. Yeah. So that's why I think applying these nature-based solutions is so highly beneficial that it's hard for me to understand that not everybody's doing it. I stop here. Thank you.
Absolutely. No, thank you, Stephen, for that. Yeah, absolutely right. So the indirect ways of going about it, like the land value capture, like you just pointed out. So thank you so much. All the panelists and speakers, for answering these questions, and also, like I said, taking the effort to answer to questions specifically in the Q&A box. So with that, I'm just now going to turn it over to Professor Babel, for the concluding session. I think so. You're on mute. We're not able to.
Sorry. Yeah. Thank you, Victor, for this Q&A with our audience and with our panelists. And it was really good to see these responses from our experts. I like to move to the segment 5, which is kind of a closing and way forward. And we are behind schedule by 15 minutes, and I think we are going to take another 10 minutes. So I like to request Dr. Kim to please try to give us key takeaways from this whole 2-hour session. It could be very brief because a lot of information, a lot of knowledge which have been shared by all the presenters. It may be a challenge for you to kind of summarize, but I like to see what you want to present. Dr. Kim, please.
Thanks, Prof. Indeed, it is a challenge and an honor to try to summarize everything. A lot of excellent ideas presented today, and also a lot of very, very good and detailed questions. If I could go to my slides, I've tried to summarize key takeaways for each one of the three segments that we talked about. The first one being NBS interventions. I think we've heard from a number of people that for NBS, there is no one-size-fits-all solution. We can go from coastal mangrove to meandering river channels and oxbow lakes and floodplains to the downtown urban thermal comfort areas. And so the nice thing about NBS, the inspiring thing about NBS, is it can be adapted to the situation. And we certainly heard examples from China's sponge cities, the street trees, impact on urban heat mitigation, and also Singapore's city in a garden philosophy. And so thanks for Perrin in particular in kind of setting the stage and providing the introduction to today's discussions. Secondly, I think we can conclude that the designs need to be evidence-based and they need to effectively integrate both form and function using a multidisciplinary approach. Okay, next slide, please. Secondly, the question was, what are the most critical enabling conditions, including the barriers that influence success or failure? And again, I think a number of excellent ideas presented here. I think overall, people generally like the idea of nature-based solutions and green space, and that's a positive. We can build on that. But we heard a lot of discussion about the need to consult and co-design with community. Particularly, I do want to emphasize in relationship to marginalized communities. Do we take a top-down approach to doing this consultation co-design? Do we take a bottom-up? Do we take a hybrid approach? But I will say that I think NBS does need to strive to equitably distribute those ecosystem services that we all discussed today. And I'm going to shamelessly take a quote from a PhD student of mine a couple of years ago when she toured some of the NBS projects in Bangkok. She said, I asked her what she thought of today, and she said, I learned today that NBS is for the rich. And I think that's something we want to avoid moving forward. some very interesting discussions on scale. How do we scale up from individual projects to citywide, to the citywide scale? And these are essential discussions moving forward. And finally, I think there was a lot of interesting discussion about stewardship and maintenance issues. Who owns, who looks after these NBS features? How are they maintained? What are the costs? And how long do they last? Okay, to wrap up, last one. The last one was what one practical and scalable pathway. And wow, this is a really difficult issue, and certainly one that is important to discuss. I think in some ways, conservation of existing green spaces may be the important way to go. And I know we can't always do that, but certainly land use policies and so on are important there. A lot of discussion about the importance of monitoring and assessment so that we can demonstrate multiple benefits, but also disbenefits that are associated with existing NBS features. So the proof is in the pudding. One of the challenges to that, though, are longitudinal studies. So we may monitor for a 1 year period and say we've succeeded, but how long, what's the lifespan of these features? Do they last, and are they effective for 10 years? So longitudinal studies, I think, still need to be undertaken. Financing is a critical issue that's discussed, and certainly in the CLARE workshop, the CLARE-ASEAN workshop last week, a lot of discussion on financing. This is an important issue, I think, that was touched on, and as is knowledge, capacity, and awareness, not only at the local community level, but also with policymakers. And something also that was touched on, I think that is important, is incorporating traditional knowledge into developing the plans and the designs in moving forward. So I think difficult task to summarize all of these issues, but hopefully this provides some reasonable summary.
Thank you very much. I think excellent. I think you have captured most of the important points. I'd like to, in the interest of time, we will move to the next. We would like to get feedback from our participants. So there is a QR code shown on your screen. Please fill in this feedback form, which will take 2 to 3 minutes, and it will provide us information for planning our next webinars. As such, also what specific aspect of NBS you would like to look into in the future webinars. So please, from now, we have about 2 to 3 minutes before we request Dr. Aryan to offer the closing remarks. So there is a link also given to all the participants. Please provide your feedback. So we will wait for about 2 minutes for all the participants to. This is a very quick, easy to do feedback form where you need to spend not more than 2 minutes. Yeah, please. Meanwhile, one question which has been raised by many of the participants, also we have received few emails just last half an hour requesting for the presentations to be shared with us. So I would like to request or ask all the presenters today whether they are fine with it. We will share the PDF version of the presentations. So anyone has got any objection to this sharing of your presentations? Dr. Perrin, are you fine with that?
Yes, yeah, I'll share with you the PDFs as I mentioned. Yep.
Dr. Wang?
Yes, it's okay for me.
Dr. Sophia?
It's okay.
Kun Pakasem?
Yeah, I'm okay, but I just need some kind of a refill, some reference, some image, and then I will send it update back. Yeah.
Thank you. And Stephen?
Yeah, same to me. I need to reference a few pictures.
Okay. So please share with us and then we will convert them into PDF, or you may want to share with us PDF directly and we'll try to send to the participants. Okay, with that, I think we can stop sharing this feedback form and would like to request Dr. Aryan De Han, our colleague from IDRC, to offer closing remarks. Dr. Aryan.
Thank you, Dr. Babel. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfect.
And thank you so much for ending with making sure that people are happy to share the presentation, because I was thinking, if I'm going to tell my colleagues what this webinar is about, I am going to tell them just listen to it. I don't think it's a good idea to try to summarize this, because this was so enormously rich. I think it did a wonderful job if help telling people that knew about nature-based solution, knew less about it, and really got into a lot of detail of what worked, what doesn't. And congratulations to AIT. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you to all the participants as a representative of the CLARE program, FCDO Canada joint programming. I think this was a fantastic thing to do. I think the three things that I want to underline, like Professor Kim, it's really hard to summarize this, and I will not try this. But the three things that I heard was, one, the urgency of this, as I think Dr. Perrin said, is that we're now building the cities of tomorrow. Climate change risk are unfortunately increasing. The choices we make now are really important. The second thing, nature-based solutions, they are not only needed, they don't only have multi-purposes, multi-benefits, but we heard a lot of examples of the things that are working, and I loved. I think it was Mr. Rao that says, I do not understand why people are not using them more, and I think this webinar really brought that out. So we've seen a lot of things that worked, really important. We know we have the tools. And we have networks, including this one, and networks. One of the speakers spoke to us, networks of people that work on this. And this is the most important thing I hear. And this is Professor Babel for the series of webinars. This is the most important function, and the next ones will do that as well. This is building, this is contributing. We're not the first ones doing this, contributing to a learning network of solutions that work. And over 250 participants at some point of time are really keen to learn about. And then so that I'm very optimistic that there is that enthusiasm and that there are the examples. And I think really important in a learning network like this is the emphasis. Well, this is not a panacea. It's not one solution. We have to think about cost. Technical solutions will not by themselves solve many of the problems. We have to work, and again, lots of good examples of we have to work with communities. The equity perspective, I think that Professor Kim also highlighted, is really important. The working with communities, and the two can go very well together, is absolutely important. And then Professor Babel, for the CLARE-ASEAN, and with the interest that the ASEAN Secretariat and the Working Group on Climate Change has in that, I think this is exactly the kind of direction where with the hard work of AIT, we're making an important contribution, that we're showing this example, that we help to share the examples of things that work, go into the detail of what works, what doesn't, and how these can promote it. And for the CLARE-ASEAN research partners to generate the evidence and to co-produce that evidence on the things, again, the things that work and don't work, so that we can inform the necessary policy. So thank you for this, and this is the first of that series of webinar with that, with so many people. It is wonderful to see that interest, and we'll take that forward in the next iterations of this. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Aryan, for your closing remarks and summarizing the three main points. I would not repeat them, but I would like to take this opportunity to thank FCDO, IDRC, ASEAN Secretariat, and the ASEAN Working Group on Climate Change. But more importantly, and equally important, is I would like to take this opportunity to thank all our speakers. And I can tell you that this was the hard work of 2 months when we started talking to our colleagues and their availability and making this happen today. I'll also like to thank my team. I would not name them in the interest of time, but there were at least 5 to 7 people worked behind the scene to make this webinar happen today. And I hope all of you would agree with me. It was a successful event. Thank you very much, and have a nice evening, and look forward to your participation again in the coming webinars and other activities of CLARE-ASEAN. This has given a very good kind of foundation for us to build, to strengthen this network, which was mentioned by several of you. I would not repeat them, but I'd like to thank Risky, who has kindly agreed on a very short notice to be with us, and all colleagues from AIT as well. Thank you very much, and have a nice evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.